Good afternoon, friends. We are about to start our conversation and presentation. I want to invite those of you who might be in our parlor space, assuming they can hear over the din, to go ahead and come on this direction. If you know that you are on the agenda, let me invite you to come sit here in these front two pews so that you can get quickly to the front as introductions happen. And we'll get started here in just a minute or two more. If you do have food that you would like to bring in, please feel free to bring it in. We're not super careful about those kinds of things. Not careful is not the right word, but I think you get the gist. So. Good afternoon, or good morning still, everybody. It's good to be with you today. Thank you for making this time to be with us. I'm sorry? Kim, would you be able to turn up the microphones just a little bit? Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Good. Well, again, good morning. It's good to be with you. Thank you for making this time to be present. We're going to work to keep our agenda right at an hour. There will be a time for question and answers at the end of the presentation and conversation today. So please track your questions. We'll have a time to ask those towards the end. As we begin this presentation, I want to just share with you a couple of thoughts and some context for how we've arrived at this moment in the life of our congregation. And as I've been thinking about all of that, I've been reminded of the scripture that we spent a month and a half studying when I first came here as the lead pastor. You might remember it from Isaiah 43. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. You may remember, if you were with us, that this prophetic good news comes to the people of Israel at a really peculiar time in their life, and it probably didn't feel like good news. They were leaving captivity in Babylon. They were on their way back to a city that had been destroyed, that many of them had never seen, and they were in the middle, literally, of the wilderness. There was no clear way to get home. They weren't sure what they were going to find when they got there. And I'm guessing that for many of them, Babylon, the place where they were in captivity, felt more like home than the home that they were returning to. But what this good news does is it reminds us that they serve a God who makes a way when we can't really foresee what way we're going, that provides what we need, even in the harshest conditions, to get to where we need to go, and is able to do more with our present circumstances than we can currently perceive or imagine, right? And it's with that conviction that almost a year ago now, we voted to begin the process of building affordable housing here on our campus. It was part of a multi-pronged effort to fulfill our mission of feeding all people, mind, body, and spirit so that none go hungry, to address over $19 million in deferred maintenance on this building, and to make sure that we secure our physical witness as a congregation, as a faith-based, progressive community, building beloved community for our community here on this corner. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce the co-chairs of our building committee who will kind of lead us through our agenda, but I want to just share some history about the congregation that gathers here today. In 1825, the Methodist Episcopal Church purchased a piece of property on Georgia Avenue and Seminary Road, about where the Aldi is now. You might know where I'm talking about. That was a place where there was a school for enslaved children in the area, as well as a worshiping community for local white, black, and Native persons. Now, in 1844, when the Methodist denomination split into pro-slavery and abolitionist factions, that community became part of the Methodist Episcopal Church South, the side which supported slavery. And they continued ministry in that location until 1972, when a guy some of you may know or have heard of, John C. Wilson, a local farmer, built a small wood frame church near his property, mostly because he wanted an abolitionist community to be there to make his brother mad. His brother was a supporter of the Confederacy. And he deeded that building to what was then Sligo Methodist Church, as long as they switched their affiliation from the pro-slavery side of things to the abolitionist side of things. The congregation made a decision to do that and then decided to sell their building back for a profit to the formerly enslaved people who had worshiped with them. Now, that community, located on Seminary Road, also worked very hard to continue finding ways to serve its community. I lost myself here. So down the road in 1872, another church got started, Marvin Memorial United Methodist Church. Marvin was named after receiving a large bequest and altar furniture from a church in D.C. that was named for a former Confederate general turned bishop, Enoch Marvin. Now, that's a dark history, and it's one that we have to own as a community here, right? We can't move forward from where we've been unless we tell the truth about where we've been. And still, both of these communities worked very carefully to serve their neighbors and remained relatively small. Sligo Church changed its name to Woodside when the Woodside neighborhood opened up because one of its trustees was a guy named Benjamin Layton, who was a local judge and developer who developed Woodside. Marvin hosted a free school, provided meals to its community, and actively engaged in efforts educating young people here in Montgomery County. Again, remember, these are both very small congregations until 1940, when one of them quintupled in size, Woodside, and Marvin about quadrupled in size. For the very first time in 1932, both churches finally had a full-time pastor, and from 1932 to 1965, both experienced really rapid growth. They built, tore down, and rebuilt multiple buildings in the span of about 45 years, including the building in which we are now gathered. Woodside tore down its sanctuary 10 years after they built it because it was too small for the congregation that they were worshiping. Marvin switched the direction of the entrance into the building. Some of you were actually there when that happened because it made access to the building better. Now, in 2014, both of these congregations had experienced significant decline. This building was built for a worshiping community of 5,500 people, which was what we were when they finished the building, and haven't been that big since. In that strategic merger, the goal was really simple. We recognized that our ministries were going to be stronger together, and we were going to better be able to serve the people of Silver Spring. And I share that kind of spotty background because there are three very important points that bring us to this conversation today. First, our congregation, as a merger of Woodside and Marvin, has historically understood our buildings primarily as missional facilities meant to serve the needs of its surrounding community. That's what we've built for, over and over and over again. Both of these congregations have tried to faithfully serve those needs and have had to make some really hard decisions and how to do that, right? Including merging, selling buildings, tearing buildings down, all of those kinds of things. And both of our congregations have benefited from the historically racist zoning laws and policies and practices in our county, which continue to inordinately impact people of color and immigrants and our elders. That's what brings us to this moment. And that's why we created the Building Beloved Community Committee, tasked with both helping us figure out how to build a building that serves our community and our needs today and in the future, and makes practical reparations for our participation in our racist history and past. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Scanlon and Allison Edwards, who are the co-chairs of our Building Beloved Community Committee.
Thank you, Pastor Will. Good morning, everyone. As Pastor said, I'm Bill Scanlon. I'm the co-chair of the Building Beloved Community Committee, and my other co-chair is Allison Edwards. And I think before we get started, we want to recognize some of the folks in attendance here that in addition to our congregation and a couple of our both Woodside Neighborhood, Woodside Civic Association, and Woodside Park Civic Association folks in attendance today. We have our county executive, Mark Elrich, with us today. Senator Jeff Waldstreicher is here, as is Delegate Emily Shetty, our local county council member, Kate Stewart, and Council Vice President Kate Stewart is with us. We're expecting also a Delegate Jared Solomon. Delegate Solomon is with us this morning as well, and we thank you. We thank you all for being in attendance, and I think we're also possibly expecting Council Member Will Jawando. Also wanted to point out a couple of folks that have been involved in the process with us so far. One of our two attorneys for this effort, we will have both a development attorney and a land use and zoning attorney. That land use and zoning attorney, a former planning board chair, and she's not able to join us today. That's Francois Carrier, but I want to thank and recognize Mo Smith with Voorhees, who's here with us today, and Mo is handling us our efforts on forming a partnership on this effort. As we get started, I wanted to turn the microphone over here first to Allison, and she's going to talk about the overview of the project, how we got started, how we got to this point, and we'll shortly thereafter announce our partners who are with us this morning. Allison?
Thank you, Bill. So back in June, our congregation chartered the Building Beloved Community Committee, and the charter, which you can read online if you go to our website, actually, if you're ever looking for it, calls for establishing a plan and development agreement for developing affordable housing on our campus, and that includes estimating the building facilities needed to house both affordable housing and the church's program of worship, education, and fellowship. So we were supposed to produce a plan for affordable housing and for our church. If you're expecting to see a plan today, I hope you're not too disappointed. Because what we have been spending the last 9 months doing is laying a foundation, if you will, since we're talking about a building here, for having a successful project. We've been in what I have been referring to as our project stand-up phase. So if we don't have a plan yet, what have we done? One of the first things we did, and I have to tell you, soon after this meeting, we will be publishing a 7-page document with all of these people's names that you're going to hear today, with background information and the supplemental information that I'm going to talk about. So you don't have to scribble furiously on the notes. Your notes have been taken for you, and we'll be posting them soon. One of the things we did early on was to clarify our desired outcomes. Now, the visioning team did a very good job of that. There were listening sessions. We had a great charge conference last June. It wasn't all written down in a very succinct document that's easy to share and for future generations to understand what the goals were. So we had a must-haves document, which will be part of that package that we put online. And if you attended the charge conference in June, nothing in that must-haves will sound unfamiliar to you. We need a sustainable long-term revenue stream. We need to offer housing to households with a range of incomes. The housing needs to fit in well aesthetically with the neighborhood. We need both the church and the housing to be accessible to persons with disabilities. We need adequate parking for both church and housing functions, et cetera. So, all of that you have heard before if you have heard anything that we've been talking about up to now. Another thing that we did very early on is enter a covenant agreement with the Baltimore, Washington United Methodist Conference, their affordable housing ministry, which is led by Sam Morello. Unfortunately, Sam could not be here today. He says he's with us in spirit, but he's someone who is walking alongside us in this process and making sure we understand the Methodist rules, because there are lots of those, and letting us know what's happening in other churches, being a conduit for communication with the conference, since they are going to be overseeing what we do. Did Pastor Cindy make it here at all? I don't see her. After we did this covenant agreement with their affordable housing ministry, the conference also started up something called Property with Purpose, and that is coordinated by Pastor Cindy Kent. And Cindy, along with Sam, has also been coming alongside us on our journey, being a good sounding board and giving us good perspective on what conference thinking will be. The next thing we did was arrange for our legal representation, as we'd mentioned before. It was great to find someone of Francoise Carrier's qualifications as a former planning board chair for Montgomery County. So she's very familiar with land use issues in our county and should help us be able to move very quickly through any zoning issues that we might encounter. Unfortunately, Francoise could not be here. The second body of work that we need from a legal perspective has to do with all of the real estate transactions that have to go on. And Mo, if you would come up here, I would really like you to introduce yourself to folks. Mo has a very interesting background in affordable housing.
Morning, folks. I have been practicing about 15 years in the affordable housing space. I went to law school specifically to do affordable housing, background in real estate, nonprofits, and so have really dedicated my career to doing a lot of this work. So when folks here at the church reached out, it was a real pleasure to have the opportunity to work with folks. Looking forward to working forward with the development partners to try to put together a really nice project.
So that's Mo Smith. I'm not sure I mentioned his last name. Beyond that, we also did some activities to help us understand the church's assets. What have we got to work with? So we had a title search done, make sure we own the land. We had a formal property appraisal, and we are in the process of getting some structural engineering reports. We don't quite have those yet, but telling us the condition of the entire facility, which is fairly large, and all of the systems in it and how much it would cost to maintain them into the future if we choose to do that, just so we understand the financial burden of this building, because it is substantial. The reports should be coming in fairly soon. We're still in conversation about how to shape those and finish those up. Those are almost wrapped up. Then along the way, while we were doing all of this, we had the pleasure of being involved in some discussions with our council folks and neighborhood folks and our interfaith group that Will is involved with about what is the shorthand name for it is the Faith ZTA. ZTA stands for Zoning Text Amendment. which just recently passed the council. It is a way to help religious organizations and educational institutions get through a little bit of the red tape involved in doing a project like this. So we thank our council folks who are here for supporting us today. The most important thing that we've done in the last 9 months, and the thing that sucked up the most time, was choosing a development partner. And for description of that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill again.
Thank you, Allison. And as Allison has indicated, we didn't arrive, and you can tell, we did not arrive at this point by accident. We have come here through a deliberate, planful, prayerful process that began really in 2022. And since June of last year, the Building Beloved Community Committee has been diligently working to fulfill the church's purpose, that God is calling us to develop affordable housing on our campus and to take the necessary steps to make that development a reality. And I just want to call out by name, and many of the committees are here. Allison and I, Beth Cirilla, you guys don't have to stand, I won't further embarrass you. But they've been great and dedicated and hardworking about this. Jeff White, Russ Stacy's here, Kyle, I see Kyle in the back, Gene Rich, Kate Rios, who welcome many of you on the way in, Brad Cannon, of course, Pastor Will on those meetings as well. And what's important to know is that collectively, the committee's professional and life experience includes project management, contractor management, architecture, construction, engineering, law, nonprofit development, financing, ministry, and actual housing challenged experience in their lives. It was a church committee, yes, and volunteers yet, but people who brought to the table real experience in this field. We've been meeting, as I said, since last June, meeting monthly, and committee members have had multiple meetings with potential developers, visited numerous development sites. We've attended affordable housing forums and Zoom hearings. We've done our homework, and we have prayerfully considered how Silver Spring United Methodist Church might move forward. We ultimately paired our search parameters to 3 local, experienced, and committed affordable housing developers. We did months of interviews, site surveys, site visits, background research, proposal reviews, reference interviews, and other due diligence. Our final selection process, we asked each of our potential developers to respond to the following 6 areas of importance to us as a committee and reflecting more broadly of importance to the church. 1, their experience in developing housing co-located on a campus with a house of worship. 2, a commitment to meeting the needs of future residents and other users of the site in building and site design. 3, the ability to provide or oversee provision of high-quality property management and resident services. 4, the degree to which Silver Spring United Methodist Church will be treated as a full partner in decision-making. 5, the quality of their team and their project manager. And 6, the effectiveness of their communications practices. The committee received earnest and substantive responses from all 3 of our potential partners. But the committee was near unanimous in selecting the team of Rick Edson and NFP Affordable Housing Corporation, the Enterprise Community Development Team, and Michael Wensick and Associates Architects. And I'm going to give a chance for representatives from those organizations to speak in a moment, but I do want to say just a couple more things about that. All 3 of the bids that we got had much to offer and brought years of affordable housing experience, but we felt that NFP, Enterprise, and Wensick and Associates were by far best suited to meet our goals at the church, including providing sustainable long-term revenue stream that will support the continuation and growth of church ministries indefinitely. 2, offering housing to households with a range of incomes and a variety of family structures and social support needs. 3, to fit in well aesthetically with the surrounding Woodside neighborhood. And I would point out that I am a 16-year resident, my wife a 40-year resident of Woodside, and I live right across the street. And 4, continue to be a Silver Spring community hub for our current church partners, and for nearby community groups and events, and offer community use space. We're now finalizing our memorandum of understanding with our intended development partners, and we plan to formalize that shortly into also as well a joint venture partnership. With today's announcement, we have nearly completed the first stage, the project stand-up phase of our development. So I want to offer congratulations to our intended partners and ask, first of all, Rob Fossey, who is the Senior VP of Enterprise Community Development, come up and say a few words about Enterprise and your approach to affordable housing.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you also, Allison and Pastor. It is I am deeply honored to be here today and to have emerged through this incredibly rigorous and thoughtful process as the one of the selected partners in this endeavor. This really is a confluence of all the things that Enterprise stands for. In fact, Enterprise was founded over 40 years ago by Jim Rouse through a combination of his real estate work and his faith, which really brought him into expanding that real estate work into serving communities of need. And down the road, Enterprise Community Development emerged. We are also mindful of the fact that we have an opportunity to do this work in our backyard. So our headquarters is just a few blocks away here in Silver Spring. I want to actually talk a little bit about some of my team that you'll be working with directly on a daily basis, and actually ask my colleague Ned Howe to say a few words as well. But to be able to work, so I'm here not just representing Enterprise Community Development, but Enterprise writ large, and to be able to work not only in the affordable space, but with a faith-based partner, working to address or redress racial injustice, and to do so in a manner that utilizes your assets for good is sort of an encapsulation of all that Enterprise does. We have a faith-based initiative in our solutions department. We bring low-cost capital to these transactions. We have a program called Equitable Path Forward, meant to redress racial injustice. To bring all that work together here in our backyard in partnership with you is incredibly exciting. So I also again want to introduce Ned, but we have two other team members here today, Praj Kazbakar and Nasha Mandima, who have been working and will continue to work on this. But behind that are another 500 Enterprise employees, the finance team, the resident service team, property management, asset management, all of whom are standing behind me right now in this partnership and this endeavor, and we'll very much look forward to be working with you. So with that, if I may, I want to introduce Ned Howe, who is on point for us moving forward here.
Thank you. And thank you, Allison. Thank you, Pastor Will. Thank you, Bill. And thank you all for being here today. So I just want to say Enterprise is really happy and excited to be here today for the announcement of our partnership with the Silver Spring United Methodist Church to help transform this property to be more than just a house of worship or an iconic institution within this community that provides more in terms of outreach services and fellowship and the like, but to also be a place that people from all walks of life can call home. It's truly inspiring to see this church and its congregations set out to do something different, to not only look for ways to sustain its presence within this community, but also meet significant needs within this community that are not being met by the current availability of housing. While new housing is being created in the Silver Spring community, the majority of it is not at a price point that allows a significant portion of its population to reap the benefits of living in new energy efficient, safe housing that is reflective of current modern living standards. Within a neighborhood like this, with outstanding schools, tremendous amenities, walkability, and a fully accessible transportation network to reach other areas within the DC metropolitan area. The people this housing will serve are members of your community that have crucial roles in the service and healthcare industry, first responders, teachers, and others that have special needs requiring supportive services. The church's charter to provide affordable housing that will advance its commitment to be an anti-racist, anti-sexist community that embodies its congregational vision to feed all people, mind, body, and spirit so that none go hungry, aligns perfectly with Enterprise's mission and priorities and will make this an extremely rewarding partnership. With partnership being a theme for the day, we would also not be here today without the efforts of our partners in the development team, including, you mentioned before, Rick Edson with NFP Affordable Housing Corp., who could not be here today, but certainly sends his wishes and will be back from his vacation shortly. And Michael Winsick of Winsick Associates, who have been working with the church long in advance of our arrival to come up with this aspirational vision that we're all looking forward to delivering upon. We're also thrilled to continue our longstanding partnership with Montgomery County and the state of Maryland in creating and preserving affordable housing, which we have undertaken for almost 4 decades now. Again, thank you, Pastor Will, and the entire congregation for selecting us, and thank you, County Executive Elrich, and members of the Montgomery County Council, and state representatives, and members of the local community association for coming here today for this exciting announcement.
Thank you so much, Ned. Can we give Ned a round of applause? So before we continue, let me apologize, friends. I've got a bit of a migraine today, and there was just a little more context I wanted to provide you about today's project. And I know that what you're really here for is to figure out what the building's going to look like, right? Right? Where's the kitchen going to be? Where the classroom's going to be? That is not this meeting. But you're going to learn more in just a minute from our partners at Winsick and Associates about how we're going to get there. So I'm going to invite them to go ahead and come to the front now, if they're still with us. There they are, so that they can share a little bit more about that process. The only other thing that I really wanted to share with us here is as we think about our role in serving Silver Spring, and the populations who are already here, the 14 recovery groups that meet here on a regular basis, the families that meet here regularly, the people that we're feeding with our mobile food pantry and our Leaders Pantry, we have to understand that our current facility does not allow us either the financial strength we need or the space we need to do that effectively right now. And here's why that is. Records going back to 1968 indicate that this congregation has struggled to keep the lights on. We were literally asking the thrift store to pay our electrical bills in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, right? We have deferred preventative maintenance on all of our mechanical and electrical systems since 1972, which means that this year alone, we have already spent $123,000 trying to keep our HVAC system running. That's not to fix it. That's not to get it to a place where it's going to be helping us move easily on the earth or care for the environment. It's literally having pumps custom built because they don't make them anymore and the pipes aren't up to code, right? So that's why we are where we are. Our present budgeted spending on facilities represents 35% of our current budget. Approximately $361,000 that you give every year goes to just trying to keep the building operational. And that's not sustainable. That's $361,000 that could be used to feed people, to house people, to provide low-cost mental health support for people that right now we're having to spend on pumps. So that's why we're here today. And part of the reason that Winsick and Associates is with us is because separate from the Affordable Housing Project, we are beginning an intentional master planning process for our campus that will help us figure out both in the short term and in the long term how to occupy this place, providing the same progressive witness that we've been offering for generations. And so with that, Michael, would you share with us just a little bit about who you are and the processes that you're helping us walk through?
Sure. Thank you, Pastor Will. I'm Michael Winsick. I'm president of Winsick and Associates. I'm feeling old today because it was 46 years ago that I made the decision to go into affordable housing and projects of social justice and equity. And we're very, very honored to be part of this team. This is going to be a seminal project, a very important project, not only for the county and for Silver Spring, but I think for the nation to show how church properties, many of which have seen a dwindling congregation but have lots of land or assets, and good locations that make sense for affordable housing to be developed on. One of the challenges always is what types of housing should be provided. And I was very excited when we were brought into the project to hear that the congregation and the committee are interested in doing home ownership for affordable residents, intergenerational housing, senior housing co-located with family housing, even down to providing supportive housing units, which is units for people who have come recently out of homelessness and need a lot of supportive services. So we're going to be exploring a lot of various uses. But as Pastor Will mentioned, we have also started to engage in understanding the existing church facility. And as many of you know, the educational wing is underutilized and probably can be made smaller. There's multiple positive aspects to that because there's a lot of utility and expense involved in heating and cooling and lighting these kind of spaces. And so you really need to right-size the program. But we also need to do in this master plan a visioning process to understand what the need is today, what the need is 3 to 5 years from now when ultimately there might be or there will be a new housing, affordable housing project connected to this facility, but then also 10 years out, 20 years out, so that we can make sure that the facility and the project can morph and meet the needs into the future. It's a simple thing, but one of the biggest challenges on this site is going to be parking. As a congregation is smaller, you need less, but as you know, with the housing portion coming in, there'll be additional people. This is a very vital congregation and a very vital ministry, and I think we're going to see that increasing the growth, and so we need to make sure that we've planned for that growth, but we can't afford to build 1,000 parking spaces for something that might happen in 25 years today, but we got to make sure it's there. And so, as I said, we've been working with the committee to understand not only this building and the utilities and facilities, but we've also been doing some exploration with Enterprise and NFP to understand the zoning and the neighborhood and the implications of mass and public vehicular and pedestrian circulation and the needs of the community that might be met by this new facility, not just as a housing program, but as an asset to the community and as a focal point along Georgia Avenue for the county. So I think that gives us a good synopsis, and I'll try to tie in some with Allison as she talks about. Thank you so much.
You might want to stay here because I sense that there might be questions you can help answer. Just from a process standpoint, I want to talk a little bit about the phase that we're entering. I'm calling it concept development. I'm not sure what you might want to call it. But this is a time when we are going to iteratively develop some concepts, both for our church building and for the housing, leading up to a church conference, hopefully in the fall, when we again vote on whether or not we move forward with the plans that we've drawn up. So we hope to have a full preliminary package of plans by mid-fall-ish. It will have to be approved by the Baltimore-Washington District Board of Church Locations and Buildings, and then it would be presented to the congregation for a vote. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can participate during this time. Of course, there will be meetings over the course of the spring, summer, early fall. There will be plenty of opportunities. There'll be kind of a ping-ponging series of meetings where we have congregation, then congregation and community, congregation and community, over several iterations until we have a mature concept. So we hope to get some dates on the calendar fairly soon so you can set those aside and participate in those. You can educate yourself about affordable housing. The document that we post on our website after this meeting will have some links that you can read, and it also links to all of last year's visioning sessions that were recorded. There's some very good ones. Rick Edson, who's our NFP partner who couldn't be here, did a very good basic tutorial on financing for affordable housing projects. So I highly recommend rewatching some of those, or if you didn't do it the first time around, now's the time. You can always be a prayer partner with us. You know, almost every week it's mentioned during our pastoral prayer time that we need your prayers, and so definitely keep that up. If you have questions ever, you can bring your questions to the pastor's coffee hour. I don't know if everyone realizes that on the fourth Sunday of every month, the pastor hosts in one of the classrooms in the education wing a coffee hour at 11:30, where you can bring any questions that you'd like to him, and we'll make sure that some building committee folks are there as well if you have questions. And you can also send us an email. We'll have the email what are we called? Beloved Community at silverspringumcp.org. That will be on the website as well. So watch for invitations for the design discussions and be prepared to jump in with that. I'm going to turn it back to Pastor Will now.
So just very quickly, I want to acknowledge a couple of things. This process that we're about to enter is going to require each and every single one of you. So if you leave here today knowing nothing else, we need your input, your advice, and your perspective. I'm looking at our elected officials because we're going to need your input and advice and perspectives as you've already given them in our visioning process. There will be ample opportunities for all of us to engage. So if you hear somebody saying, I didn't get a chance to speak, everybody's going to have a chance to speak. And you can invite them and remind them that this is a participatory conversation. Nobody is going to design the building for you. We're going to do it together. Same thing goes for our neighbors. Our neighbors in both Woodside Park and in Woodside are aware of this project. We've been in close conversations with them. There are going to be opportunities for them to weigh in. And so if you're out in the world and you hear people asking questions, please feel free to direct them back to the church, to direct them to me. They can go to our website, silverspringumc.org/beloved community, and all of this information is going to be available there. And the last and most important thing is this. As you've already heard, we are indeed a vital congregation. Our attendance is up 42% from 2 years ago. Praise God. Amen. And we know that we are going to have to build back space for all of the growing ministries that we've got. We know that we want to preserve as much of our space as we can for the ministries we're already doing. And what that's going to mean is that some of us will have to give up spaces we love. Some of us will have to move into spaces that are new to us as we continue to try to live together in community. But that's the most important thing of all. We're doing it together in community. And so now, in that kind of spirit, I want to invite some questions and answers before we hear from our elected officials and conclude our time together. So what questions do you have for our architecture firm, for our development partners, or for our committee? So the question was, is the appraisal on the website? And the answer is no, not yet, but it will be. We've done a couple of important studies that are all going to be posted. So we just got an asbestos report back. You'll be seeing a memo come out from me this week about that. It told us a lot of what we were already expecting, that about 89% of the surfaces in the building have asbestos in them, on them, or around them. And part of this project is going to be helping us address that reality. That'll be on the website. The appraisal will be on the website. And that appraisal, just so we're clear, took a look at all of our physical assets. So both the house in our parking lot, the parsonage in which I currently reside, and this building. The net value, just to be totally transparent, based on what we've gotten back so far, is about $17.5 million. The building itself is only worth about $3 million of that value. So the building is worth about $3 million. The property and the houses are worth the rest of that total. The last report we'll be getting is what's called a Facilities Condition Assessment, an FCA, and that's going to tell us all of the work that has to go into maintaining the building, both now and in the future, and kind of be a litmus test for us as we begin to think about how we might move into different spaces or create different spaces that are more sustainable and preserve as much of the building as we can.
Thank you. So I'm a little confused by the 3 partners. Can you give a very brief description of what NFP will do versus what Enterprise will do?
Let's go with that one. Is that better? Oh, whoa. Praise the Lord. Anyway, NFP actually brought us in because NFP had been working with the church for a year with Michael, and they were looking for someone with a little more horsepower probably to take on a project of this size. So as we've come in, we're still in the process of figuring out exact roles, but we will be the lead developer of this with NFP working with us. And Michael, of course, is a project architect, so he'll be doing the architectural design work and things like that. We haven't selected general contractors, even though we have a property management firm. We haven't said that we're going to manage the property. These are all things that are going to be worked out as we move forward in the process. But just, we're still not crossing every T and every dot at this stage, but know that we will be the lead firm that will take on this development process in concert with NFP, and Mike will be working with us as well. Does that help? Kinda?
I want to add one important addendum to that, which is that building beloved community in the church is the other part of that partnership. I can't remember who referred to it, but the MOU that was described leading to a joint venture agreement, those documents will spell that out, and we've just begun kind of circulating. So as with everything else, once those are complete, those will be posted and shared as well.
Hi, thanks for providing an overview. I'm actually from the neighborhood, so I'm not a member of the church. My name's Todd. I'm just curious. I know that the look and the aesthetic hasn't been developed and everything, and that's fine yet. But I'm just kind of curious as to where will it actually is expected to be located, like on the actual campus, since it's a fairly large plot.
Yeah. So we occupy about 3 acres here on our corner of Silver Spring. And we don't know yet is the basic answer, right? And we anticipate that the neighborhood association as well as members of the congregation will be involved in that conversation. We anticipate that a portion of this building in which we currently reside will be torn down, right? And so at least some of the housing, if not the bulk of the housing, would be in the footprint of whatever is taken down, right? To give you a little more perspective, we occupy 67,000 square feet of space. 91% of that's underutilized. So even though we're a growing congregation, even though we've got a lot happening in our building, about 90% of our building doesn't get used, including classrooms that weren't opened in over a decade, right? When I got here, there were rooms that nobody here in recent memory had been inside, right? So that's a long answer. We don't know yet. We'll be in conversation about it, but I anticipate, in the massing plan at least that we saw, that the bulk of it would be in the center of the campus where our education building is now, or a portion of our education building.
Any last questions? Let's get a microphone to you soon.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Say it again, yes. So based on the massing plan that we saw, that the entire congregation saw early in the process, my anticipation is that the bulk of the housing would be in some or all of the footprint currently occupied by our education building. That doesn't mean that we would lose all of our educational spaces, however, because part of the plan is to build back space for the congregation, to reclaim space that's currently used by outdated HVAC equipment that is now much smaller, and to renovate and restore spaces within portions of the building we retain for the purposes that we'll discern as we move through those community charrettes with Winsack and Associates.
Is there any other questions?
It's not a question. We have some food back there and some snacks and some drinks.
Thank you.
And if
Thank you, Rob.
If you're famished, and you walk away, it's on you. Okay.
You heard the man. Please get some food.
Your signal to wrap.
And that's how you know you're in a Methodist church. That's how you know you're in a Methodist church. I see another question back here from Sarah.
Yes, thank you. I'm curious, and this might require some of the elected officials, but I'm curious about the utilization rates of housing choice vouchers in the area, and I am assuming that hopefully I will get confirmation that the future affordable housing complex that we create will accept housing choice vouchers as one form of rental assistance.
Mr. County Executive, do you want to speak to that?
So I can't imagine not accepting housing choice vouchers. We're very upset. We know we've got some landlords who refuse to accept any form of payment. We're trying to change our law so we can make that extremely difficult and painful if you try to do that. So I'm not looking for a way not to do it, I think. And the utilization rates, we're basically starving for vouchers because we can't create our own vouchers. They come from the federal government. And the federal government release of vouchers is nowhere near the need in the community. And we've tried sometimes to target them. Say, for example, on homeless folks, because they've had a hard time getting vouchers, or veterans at one point, but the supply exceeds, is much less than demand for the vouchers. So we'll ask, but we have to find other ways to do this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Other questions? All right. Oh. So we're moving over to Tijuana.
Thank you. I'm being a spokesperson for a couple of people here that ask me questions. As we continue to make improvements, i.e. our new doors and everything down in the fellowship hall, are we to recycle? In other words, we're not spending money on things that, wait a minute, we're getting ready to do a project in 2 or 3 years, and those doors are going to be out there not used after we spent the money on these improvements. So that's the question, to confirmation that, wait a minute, all the money that we're spending now, as much of the improvements will be retained or reused at another, through another facility.
That's a really good question with a really complicated answer, right? So there are certain systems in the building that require immediate replacement. Our HVAC is a perfect example of that. Those of you who were here in 2022 remember that July, my first July here, the air conditioning didn't work, right? And we would leave the sanctuary and it would be 103 degrees in here. That was because there was a part for the system that had to be replaced for the HVAC to work that's custom made for an HVAC system we will likely not have in a new building. We are getting ready to spend $32,000 on a heat pump that has to be replaced if we want heating in the fall. We will likely not need that in a new building. We may very well have to replace our boilers this fall, or at least one of them. That's $130,000. We will likely not use that boiler in a new system. Now, here's the good news. We're working with Winsick & Associates now to begin to determine functionally what we can save and what we can't, so that we're not throwing good money after bad unless we're in a position that without replacing something, it's going to cause irreparable damage to the congregation or inadvertently impact our ability to gather here on a regular basis. The strategy of the Leadership Council has been to make sure that we are able to be in this building on Sunday mornings for worship and that we're still able to provide the vital community services that we're providing right now, to spend money and prioritize the spending of money on that.
Any more questions, folks? Please, please.
Oh, I see a question at the back from Whitney.
It may be too early for this, but what provisions are there in the county planning or in our own planning for parking and things like that? Because I do know that some of the problems in local area building is worry about traffic and worry about parking places, especially when there's public transportation available. And I just wonder about how that fits into the county's plan and our own.
Can I just say from the committee's perspective, and this goes back to the visioning, that parking is about near the top of things that people are concerned about. So we have not only talked about it, we realize it's a huge, huge issue. Go ahead.
We already need overflow parking on Sunday mornings, most Sundays these days, right? We're using the DHS facility next door. Again, this is why we brought Winsick & Associates in when we did, so that we're able, when we show up at the table with our development partners, to advocate for the needs of our congregation both now and in the future. so that we're walking in with our eyes fully open to what the needs are going to be, what they could be in the future. But I don't know where the parking's going to be. I can't answer that question. So we're going to wrap up here in just a second. I want to invite any of our elected officials who might like to speak a word to the congregation about this project or what you hope to see in it to speak, and then we'll close with prayer and head into the rest of our day.
So first of all, I want to thank you. I think it was about 2 years ago, we sat down and had the first conversation about this. And we wanted to figure out how you could go forward this. And Kate Chance, who's our faith liaison, has been part of this pretty much from the beginning. And we're actually doing multiple church projects. I think we have 7. So we're aggressively figuring out how people can use the space on their campuses to add additional housing. We hopefully, as you all work through this, it would be good for us to be part of this so we understand, because you are going at the front of the line here, what you're doing here that we can make sure we replicate in the other projects we're trying to do. And I know every place we do this, we're going to run into this. Parking is going to be an issue. Massing is going to be an issue. Those are all going to be things that you have to deal with at the community level. We want to make sure that we, look at the best practices that you've done. And I'd say you have a lot of fidelity from our very first conversation. I don't hear anything different now. There hasn't been mission creep, and there hasn't been, I guess we're not going to be able to do all this good stuff, so we're going to do something less good. Actually, you're striving for, that happens. And so I'm really glad that you're striving for the same things that you started out striving for, and we'll be partners going through this as we go forward. It's very exciting to get this, to see this thing in the process it is right now and get done. The only thing I lament, and I will try to figure out a way around this, I don't think you should need an attorney to do this project. You've got somebody with amazing development experience who has a pretty good portfolio. We've loosened up our laws, so this is a lot easier to get, and we need to think about, is there another way to do this? Because attorneys are extraordinarily expensive unless you've got a pro bono attorney. But if it's not a pro bono attorney, I know what they cost. And I'll put some thought into what we might be able to do to get you the support you need without having you to have to go out and use attorneys. I don't want to supply the attorney industry. I want to make sure that I want to make sure you get your projects delivered the most effective way you can get your projects delivered. And any money spent where you don't need it spent is money that's not available for the things you want to do. It's either higher rents, it's some finish or feature that you don't get to put in the building. So I'm very sensitive to how we spend our money on things. So happy to work with you and maybe I'll bounce some ideas off Kate and some other people about a way we could provide more support internally within the county. That would be one way we could look at doing this. So anyway, thank you all very much. And you've got a great team, I got to say, with Enterprise, who I know very well. They're one of the groups I go to first because I know what they do, and I know they do it at scale, and I know they have the ability to deliver at scale, and I know they've done this for many, many years, and they've always been mission-driven and always been true to what they try to do. So you couldn't have, I don't think, a more trustworthy partner than Enterprise in this. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm never quick to disagree with with the county executive in public, but let me put in a good word for attorneys. No. I'm just joking around. My name is Jeff Waldstreicher. It's my honor to serve in the state Senate representing these neighborhoods of Silver Spring. And I want to thank the pastor for all the hard work you're doing, but also for the history lesson, because this gets me passionate. So not only do I represent this area of Silver Spring, I also grew up here. And I went to 2 schools named after families that are the defining families of Silver Spring and the defining tension that the pastor identified here. Because the history of Silver Spring is the tension between exclusion and inclusion. The 2 families that founded Silver Spring are the Blair family and the Lee family. I went to Montgomery Blair High School up the street. I went to Edward Brooke Lee Middle School the other way in the street. And the history of these families tells the history of this tension. The Lee family, of course, most famously was on both sides of the Civil War. The Maryland side of the Lee family was the abolitionist family. The Blair family also famously was on both sides of the Civil War, and Montgomery Blair, over whom the school is named and Blair Road, was the postmaster to President Lincoln and a fierce abolitionist. His sister is Elizabeth Blair Lee. The two families intermingled and wed, and their family continues to be active here. But even as the abolitionist sides of both families was predominantly the Maryland side, we see this tension between inclusion and exclusion play out even in that family. I mentioned Edward Brooke Lee. He is very much the founder of the Montgomery County that we know today, an incredible war hero who fought in World War I. But as he created this county and many of the zoning ordinances that are included within it, he excluded from that community African Americans and Jews. And so this tension between inclusion and exclusion is inherent in the founding of Silver Spring, inherent in the families that defined what this community is. And what you're doing in this project, each and every one of you, is making a choice within that tension. And you are choosing inclusion. And so that's why I'm so proud to be a part of this, so proud to support it from a state government perspective, and so proud to be part of this community. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, it's afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate Stewart. I'm the Council Vice President and the District Representative for this area on the Montgomery County Council, and I'm thrilled to be here. As was said, this has been such a thoughtful process to look at how to bring together the community to forward the mission of this congregation. And I am so proud to represent this area and to have been part of these conversations over the last few months and year. And I just also want to say, agree with the county executive regarding enterprise. Before being on the county council, I was the mayor in the city of Tacoma Park for over 8 years. And I know enterprise so well from my time there and on the county council, and you chose well. So I'm thrilled. When I heard who you chose, I was like, that makes my job a lot easier, because I know as we go through this process, we're going to hit bumps in the road. We are not going to agree on everything, because that's life, because we don't, right? But I think the way that we're starting this process, the intentionality you all have, what is driving this, and the partners you have chosen are really setting up as well as a community to move forward with it. I'm also really thrilled because, as was mentioned, we just passed on the county council our faith zoning text amendment on Tuesday. I led this process with our council president, Andrew Friedson, and you all were the inspiration. It was the first conversations that we had almost a year ago, and thinking about the barriers that communities face to do more affordable housing, both ownership and rental, that we started writing this zoning text amendment. And so I'm thrilled that this has passed. I'm looking forward to the county executive, working with other faith institutions in the county. And I do want to say Kate Chance, our faith liaison, and the work she's doing in this area is amazing. So thank you so much, Kate. And I'm just looking forward to continuing working together. Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge Kate. Kate, would you rise, please, for us? Kate has been a partner of mine in lots of good trouble here in the county. I'm so grateful that you're with us and for helping drive this conversation in so many other communities. I also want to thank each of you and acknowledge that because of the work that we have chosen to do, although it's hard and although there are lots of unknowns, we are already inspiring other congregations to begin this work. So next week, I'll be meeting with 4 different United Methodist congregations in the Baltimore, Washington Annual Conference to share with them the process that we've used here as they begin the process of discerning whether or not they're called to build affordable housing. So you, by making the choices that you have made, are inspiring other people to do the next faithful thing in front of them, even if they're not quite sure where it's going to take them, right? Behold, I am doing a new thing. Can you not perceive it? We caught a little glimpse of it today. There are going to be other opportunities to catch even a greater glimpse in the coming days. Please stay connected to the conversation. Go to silverspringumc.org/beloved community. Let's say that together. silverspringumc.org/beloved community. If you've ever got any questions or want more information, and please don't hesitate to stop me and ask me. This is something that I'm personally excited about. It's something that I am excited about for us as a congregation. And I know that God's going to do a good thing here and in the future for the people of Silver Spring United Methodist Church. Thank you for your time. Please make sure to grab that food, as Rob reminded us. There's lots back there. And stick around. I think our development partners might stick around for just a few minutes if we've got questions for them. You can come here to the front of the sanctuary and query, not grill, query, as we move into the rest of our day. Thank you, friends, so much for your time.